Good morning, everyone. We're this is Christmas week. Today is the winter solstice day. So we're going to be talking about Christmas, perhaps about the winter solstice. We'll see. Let's start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Master Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend Swami Kriyananda, humbly we bow to you all. We live in this world as your children. We are here to spread your light, to do your will, to live according to thy plan for us. Guide us through all the confusing choices that life presents, that we may hold steady in our perfect love for thee. We have but one goal in life, which is to be instruments of your love in this world. Guide us and bless us. Om. Peace. Amen. I don't pretend to be constantly aware of astrological or planetary things, but I am impressed by how often we respond to them anyway. Today is the winter solstice, the darkest day, and then the light begins again. And it's a rhythm, of course, at my age that I've lived through time after time. And I have a strong predilection for tropical islands. Actually seem like normal to me. Everything else seems some evilly imposed aberration. But nonetheless, there's always this feeling of increasing darkness. And just when I begin to think that this is growing really tiresome, we come to this day where it shifts. And I must say, even though I joke about the tropical island preference, there is something really dynamically beautiful about it. And I think I remember fondly incarnations in which our lives were, my life was more regularly attuned to the reality of the natural world. And whether or not Jesus was actually born at this season or not, it's, as some people say, that this was a festival that already existed, that his birthday was put into. It doesn't really make any difference because the truth of his teachings is what really counts. But it is a perfect time, because into that darkness comes the light. And then once the light is present, everything begins to shift. And I always feel that, this time of year, I always feel that shift. And so it is strongly associated in my mind with the coming of the Christ child. I was remembering, I've mentioned to you, as you all know, that I was raised Jewish, so I never studied anything about Jesus at all. I never studied religion altogether. We were Jews more culturally and then religiously. You know, our lives touched a little bit into the religion, but not very seriously. My parents weren't deeply inspired that way. And I never thought about God per se. I thought about meaning. I thought a great deal about meaning, meaningful living, meaningful life. And there was a tremendous sense of ethics in our family, and that was a Jewish characteristic. The way religion is also expressed in the Jewish world is through strong ethical and moral imperatives. So when I moved to Ananda village when I was 24, and soon after, I remember, it was within the first year or two, Master had written full commentaries, extensive commentaries on the New Testament and a little bit on other parts of the Bible, but they were unpublished in book form until the late 90s, and this was the early 70s. But Shivani, I'm not yeah, that's when it came out. Shivani, who was a founding member of Ananda, was she was very much of a scholar, and Master had written those commentaries as magazine articles over many, many years. So Shivani gained access to a complete set of the magazines from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, all through there, and pulled out those articles and Xeroxed them. But the commentary both to the Bible and to the Bhagavad Gita, she produced in Xerox form, just in bound notebooks, and it was, you were just looking at the copies of the magazine articles, but there was the whole content of his commentary. Later, when it was in book form, it was edited, which Master had wanted it to be, but it was changed in ways that the original was very nice. The original was also not as clear, because that's how it was. He wrote it quickly. He dictated it. But I remember being in seclusion, and I lived in this little trailer, and I was in seclusion there for a week or two, usually probably at least 2 weeks, just all by myself in the forest. The first 16 years of my Ananda life, I lived at pretty much, actually, as I was just saying, very close to nature. I was very conscious during those years of the stars and the moons and the seasons and the weather, much more than I have been in the last 30. Once you move into a solid house with electricity, it doesn't matter whether the moon is full or not, because your world is always the same. And where there's street lights and so on, it just doesn't matter. You can still see it. Thank you. I'm very grateful for that. But it doesn't affect you as profoundly as it affects you when you don't even have indoor plumbing. So you go outside in the middle of the night and you really know what the world is doing, which is physically perhaps less luxurious, but spiritually it was magnificent. But so I'm in this little trailer, just sort of very close to the natural world, and I'm reading these commentaries, and I had been several years, now that I think about this, it must be the mid-70s, I'd been several years with Swamiji at that point, so it wasn't like I didn't know anything. But I was so captivated by Master's explanation, and what it did for me is it inspired me with the necessity to blank out all my preconceptions, not merely about Jesus, but just to blank out preconceptions, because where do we get these ideas? I had all these ideas about Jesus. I'd never even studied it. It just came in from the society around me, the way everyone else thought about him. And here, Master, in writing his Bible commentaries, is fulfilling Babaji's commission to him. And the commission was that Master should restore the original teachings of Jesus and the original teachings of Krishna, and to show that they were the same. It's just like, now, of course, we're 50 years later, and the whole planet is beginning to catch up with this idea that that separation is not as true as unity is true. Master said that to show that the teachings of Krishna and the teachings of Jesus were the same was to show the underlying unifying principle, which is the principle of self-realization. And as I'm reading what the teachings of Jesus are, and Master's drawing connections between Sanatana Dharma, which is the real name for the teachings of India. Sanatana Dharma means eternal religion, or alternately it can be described as that which is my favorite definition, because that which is takes it beyond mere human ideas. Religion is a human idea. That which is the way creation is made. It's God's, the divine expression into this world is that which is. And Jesus and Krishna and Buddha and Moses and all the great avatars for all the ages, they had a realization, a revelation of that which is. And then in a particular time, in a particular place, they came to express it. And the apparent differences in the teachings among different avatars is not because their essential message is different, but because once they incarnate, how they present that which is determined by the needs of the disciples and the nature of the civilization that they've come into and the divinely assigned purpose of that incarnation. Lahiri Mahashaya met Babaji, received Kriya initiation, and then went back and lived in Varanasi. Very quietly, never founded an organization, never on his own wrote any books, never tried to start any revolution in any outward sense, but he just lived a quiet life, meditated, and gradually initiated hundreds, thousands of people into Kriya, and just brought back. He was the first sort of big wave, to come in to bring back this ancient teaching, which Master was the last in the line of those gurus. And but Lahiri Mahashaya's message was tailored to the time and place in which he lived, which was Varanasi, which, even though much of the highest teachings had been lost, and much ritual and priestliness had set in, there was still a deep fundamental understanding of Sanatana Dharma, of that which is, to which Lahiri added Kriya, but he didn't have to start from scratch like Master did in Los Angeles and explain everything to us, and like Master had to do in these commentaries. So Master is talking about Jesus as everybody knows him, but he also was putting him in the context of that which is, and showing that Jesus was not as is so often thought. I mean, this is how it was expressed to be by one of the Christian, that revelation began and ended with Jesus, and that just he was the only one who ever knew this, and therefore is unique, and therefore you can't be saved, and therefore you have to follow him in order to be free. One of my friends who was an Episcopal priest, he said he could continue to be an Episcopalian, he just changed the word only, only Son of God, to mean what Master explained, which is the only true offspring of the infinite, is the infinite dwelling within us. And what Jesus expressed was the full infinity that dwells within him. But that which I do, ye shall do, and greater things. That's what Jesus said. Be ye therefore perfect, even as our Father in heaven is perfect. All of these teachings make perfect sense when you go back to Sanatana Dharma. So when I was there in my seclusion reading this and really comprehending how radically different Master's teachings are, this is not just a sort of fun continuation of what's always been. It's a line in the sand where, see, what we're doing is we're moving out of Kali and into Dwapara Yuga. And so we have to erase all of this Kali Yuga overlay. Now, and I remember also thinking at that moment, and this is where I realized I had to be willing to examine my first principles in everything. I thought, if something so fundamental to the West as the teachings of Jesus could be so different from Sanatana Dharma, I thought, how many other things have I been told that are simply not true? And it was a very mind-opening feeling, and it just opened me up to the possibility of Jesus in a way that I've lived with great joy and great passion ever since. And interestingly, the deeper that I put myself into the way Master allows me to understand Christ, the more appreciation I have, even for those who are very narrow in their focus, because of the love they have for him. And what I've also come to really understand is how powerful loving these masters is for us. And the more deeply and concentrated and wholeheartedly and completely we can do this. 2 days ago, the Sunday service reading that Swami has for every week included the Gita verse. It was called, the reading was the Star of Bethlehem, and how the wise men found the baby in the manger, and his star, which is actually symbolically represents the spiritual eye. And the three wise men, Master said, were Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Babaji. And the star that they saw is the star that we see inwardly when we meditate very deeply, and the single eye of spirit, the spiritual eye, appears, and in the center of that is a white star. And when the wise men followed the star, see, these are all the things that Master writes in this commentary. When the wise men, those three wise men, followed the star, they were following their inner intuition. And when they got to the manger and the star rested over the presence of Christ, it was a poetic and esoteric statement to say this is a fully realized master who comes from the highest level of divine possibility, which is penetrating the star at the center of the spiritual eye. So on one hand, you have the beautiful poetic myth of the star in the sky, and then you also have this, and it becomes symbolic because it was always in front of them. That's how they put it. It was, that star was always in front of them, and the way Jesus puts it is, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. And he's speaking directly, again, this is how Master put it, of the single eye of spirit, which is exactly what Krishna and all the Eastern teachers have always spoken of, is this great light. You know, we'll see this great light when we I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills. I will lift up mine eyes. It's not the hills that from whence cometh my help. This is the Psalm of David. But it's when we lift our eyes, because you have to lift your eyes to see the spiritual eye. And it all starts weaving together. And all of that is marvelous. But then it comes back to this perfect love. And this was the Gita commentary that was partnered with the Star of Bethlehem. And I'm going to paraphrase it. I can't quote it exactly, but the meaning is this. He who understands, this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Krishna says, Krishna is the Lord incarnate. Krishna is, a master used to sometimes spell Krishna Chrishna, Krishna, or sometimes he would even put Krishna, so that we would understand that Jesus, the Christ, and Krishna, it's the same title. It's the realized one, the anointed one of God is what it means. And both lived from the same reality. That in Krishna is saying to his disciple Arjuna, those who comprehend my incarnation, who know me, and Krishna's talking about, you know, the avatar, the manifested form in human form of the divine presence, of the fully realized soul who returns out of compassion, takes a physical body for one reason, which is for the salvation of mankind. In the Festival of Light, we say, greater can no love be than this, from a life of infinite joy and freedom in God, willingly to embrace limitation, pain, and death for the salvation of mankind. Such ever has been the sacrifice of the great masters for the world. And just greater could no love be than this, that they come back to help us out of infinite, literally infinite compassion. And so Krishna says, those who know me as I am, who comprehend my incarnation. When such souls die, they too become infinite. It's the words are not they attain moksha, they become liberated, but it says they need incarnate no more. And it's a magnificent thought that I spoke about it some on Sunday, but I didn't feel like I touched it the way I felt it. It's to comprehend these souls as they are, we have to, of course, raise our own consciousness. But one of the ways we do it is by attunement, and the attunement with them, and the way that attunement comes is by love. And love is it's very personal. I was listening to Swami just speak on some of the recordings I have, and he said, God is very personal. He said he is you. He said when you have a joyous time, God is having a joyous time with you, through you, as you. And so it's intimate. Sometimes we get this really great big picture, which is also true. You see, this is as Swami put it, if God is infinite, that means God is also infinitesimal, because he's everywhere and he's everything. So the smallest manifestation is equally divine as the largest. And certainly I count myself as one of the smallest, in the great scheme of things, just one little incarnation, one little jiva. But it's also very, very personal. Personal, we have this profound, deep longing for personal connection. And Swami put it once that God doesn't plant desires in our hearts that he doesn't intend to fulfill. We may imagine that the fulfillment will come in a way that it won't come, but that doesn't mean that the desire won't be fulfilled. It's just that we have to be disappointed enough times to erase our preconceptions and be willing to actually both receive and to understand where that fulfillment will really come from. So even as we elevate the teachings of Jesus, or Jesus himself, to this avatar status with a wholly different understanding of it, one more part of that I want to say. Christianity really actually shot itself in the foot when it made Jesus unique, because it takes away so much of how we conduct our own spiritual lives. Ironically, Judaism and Christianity have both put themselves in the same spot, because Christianity says there's only Jesus, and so therefore the possibility for me to become Jesus, even though Jesus himself said we could, that which I do, greater ye shall do, and greater things. And in the Jewish side, the fact that they don't understand who the Messiah is, it's the same mistake. The Jews don't understand what the Messiah is, and the Christians don't understand what Jesus is. And that's where Krishna comes in. And Krishna says again and again, whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I, the infinite spirit, take visible form to restore dharma. And it also, in Sanatana Dharma, we understand that the avatar is an individual jiva, just like you, just like me, who has gone through the process of self-realization and become free. But the process that the avatar goes through is exactly the same process I'm going through and you're going through. He's just finished. Literally, it's a very high mountain, and he reached the summit. And we're on the path, and we're going up the mountain. We haven't reached the summit. But what that does is that tells us how to live. And then there's this extra part of it, which is where I really wanted to go, which is it's the power of the avatar. It's the power of the master. The way we reach that summit is the energy and the love of the masters comes down and literally takes us by the hand and pulls us up. we have to walk, but he's also pulling us forward and pushing from behind. And what makes that link? St. John in the Bible, all who received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. And what does it mean to receive? It means to remove all barriers and accept. What else is love but that? To just remove all barriers and just allow the consciousness of the other to come into us. Fearlessly, we allow that because of trust and because of love. So I've become very profoundly touched by the passion that many followers of Jesus have for him. And far from, looking at it with a dry philosophical eye, I've tried my best to incorporate into my life, just put aside every idea that I've just been talking about, and just feel the extraordinary potential of perfect love that Jesus expressed, that Jesus manifested, and that he offers to each one of us. Sister Gyanamata wrote to Master words to this effect. I'm not quoting exactly. She said, she was Jnana Mata. She was the mother of wisdom. But this is what she wrote in her wisdom. She wrote, actually, there's a wonderful poem. It's not her poem, but it's one she quotes to Master. She's talking about how she loves him. She just wrote him all these love letters. I am but a simple maid, foolish and unheeding, yet I follow unafraid where my heart is leading. And she wrote to Master that she understands that Master was sent by Babaji and that this is a great mission. I'm adding words to her letter, but this is a great mission and you have this great work to do and the whole world will be shifted by your incarnation. And, she knew it all. Of course she knew it all because she understood him and she was the mother of wisdom. She knew. But she then wrote, but I like to think you incarnated just for me. And she wrote that just without any reservation or apology, because she also knew it was true, and it was true. He did come just for her, and just for me, and just for you. The Festival of Light, a prayer of love went up from earth, and you responded. It doesn't say a whole lot of prayers went up. It says a prayer went up from earth and you responded. And Master himself writes in his God's Boatman, I will come back again and again, 1,000,000,000,000 times if necessary, as long as one stray brother is left by the wayside. Now, that's what it is to be with these masters and meditate on this, because there's so many ways that we resist the power of that one-to-one relationship. And that's why John had to say, as many as received him. Why can we not receive Jesus like that? What keeps our hearts too small? That's what Christmas is about. It's to cast aside. Swamiji defined renunciation this way. He said, this to me is renunciation, to cast aside all limitation and embrace infinity. This to me is my relationship with Christ, to cast aside all limitation and receive his infinity. God bless you.